Hey Saber fans! So I have a very pretty Dooku for you today. It's the 89sabers version. Beautiful hilt. Absolutely beautiful. Really loud. Really loud.
I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
This was one really difficult install. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm using Dimitri Stock's Stock Custom Works chassis from Shapeways, and I got to tell you, the modifications and the amount of effort that went into this is no small feat. This Saber fought me most of the way. It was not making it easy on me. A couple little extra screws in here for the customer, blade retention screw, and these two extra screws there for the gold trigger, which I'm glad they included extra screws just because they're so small, but yeah. Oh, there's a battery level indicator. Nice little blade plug. Stock V3 PCB. I'll move this out of the way. I don't need that anymore. And with my little demo blade here. There it goes. Well, of course, color changing on the fly. Go back to whenever he was a Jedi, right? Nice white. Back to red. Yeah, this chassis was insanely complicated. Not a whole lot of extra room to work with in most areas. So, as far as the end user is concerned, all you ever really need to do, as far as maintenance goes, like charging, undo this brass greebly, pull off the pommel. Here you have your speaker, and you have your recharge port and data transfer, and a kill switch.
I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
And what I love about this chassis is the fact that whenever you plug this in for charging, there's two LEDs here. The bottom one, you can kind of see the little holes there. You'll see it better now, but... So USB-C using the same charger that I use for my phone. 5 volts in, gets turned into 4.2 volts and charges it, so... Charging LED, and there's an LED at top too whenever it's fully charged. And the SD card access is also through that. So you cycle through the menu.
Sound bank selection.
As you see, my Jedi...
Crystal 94. Exit menu games. System menu. SD card USB access.
That is how you access your SD card contents. And I gotta tell you, I'm really impressed with it. They did really well with it.
Exit crystal focus.
I've always loved the crystal focus sound font. The speaker is removable. If you it's a pressure fit. I wanted it to be a pressure fit, but there is stock pins on the inside there that allow for it to be removable. It's not really necessary considering the only access you get is for your SD card, which you can get through that. So, and a nice little gasket in there to prevent the speaker from rattling against the pommel. Very well designed chassis. And for the rest of the chassis access, you need a slotted head. You just unscrew this one screw down here. And whoop. Removable battery, stock indexed PCB connector, OLED.
Sound bank selection. Crystal focus.
Nebula, as you see, my Jedi powers are far beyond yours. I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
And this LED is actually for the Bluetooth. So whenever you connect to Bluetooth to make any changes you want, that will be a solid instead of blinking. Battery removal is super easy. Literally just push on this gap up here and boom. It was a really tight build.
I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
And it just goes right back in. Line up the spine with that little groove. Push it in. And of course the OLED has a lot of cool little things with it. So your battery level indicator, I think that was the font name, other neat little animations, you know. Yeah, this install is not for the faint of heart or the uninitiated. That is the best way I can say it. Like, you want to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing on an install, because it is not easy. So for one, as you can see, I'll just go ahead and pull it out for you real quick. This does not come machined in. That is custom, as well as that. And also the set screws holding the top part of the chassis, that is also custom. And it needs to be fairly precise, specifically on those retention screws, otherwise you're going to run into issues because the chassis needs to be fully seated, yada yada yada. Yeah, this one fought me a lot. Even after I got all the modifications done down here, it still continued to fight me. It was not easy by any means, but worked my ass off and got it done. Before the deadline, too. Oh, and by the way, this elbow here is steel. That is not aluminum. That is a steel elbow. And for anybody who has experience drilling and cutting steel or stainless steel, it is very tough shit. Very tough shit. I also had to do quite a bit of modifications to the switch holder LED section, just so I could get this as flush as possible. This was as good as I could get it. Not even kidding. Let's see, how do you activate mute on a CFX again? Is the kill switch turned off? I bet you I turned the kill switch off, didn't I?
I've become more powerful than any Jedi.
There you go. Being goofy.
Mute.
Yep, still the same mute as it's always been. But yeah, you can see the LED shines through there. I can't say I'm too big of a fan of how this was set up here, but it's still not bad. I mean, get good activation, clicky now, but you can see there's a little gap there, and I'm not a huge fan of how they did the gold trigger, but it still works pretty well. Let's see, the modification I had to do up here was there was a hole on this sleeve. You can kind of see the holes there. There's one below that, which the switch PCB sits in, and it was not ideal. It was sticking up way higher than that, and it looked like crap. Regardless, this is a really nice saber. I love the fact that able to get a 28mm bass speaker in there, because it sounds so good. I mean, seriously.
Sound bank selection.
As you see, my Jedi powers are far beyond yours.
Freaking loud.
Gray meat.
I've always loved gray meat. Dude, God, that stuff is loud. Try not to blind you guys. Can't remember if gray meat is smooth swing remixed or not. Oh yeah, it is. Hell yeah. I've always loved gray meat's ignition. It's a good one. Whew, God, that's loud. But yeah, let's see, anything else? I think that about covers it. I did notice the chassis part on the top going into the elbow was like super tight. There was quite a few other modifications I did have to make actually, like the part that slips into this upper section here, that's also steel from the elbow. I actually had to sand that down because it was just uber tight. Like it wasn't sliding in and out easily. I'm telling you, I think I may have spent like 7 hours roughly just getting this to where I could install it. Was not easy by any means. I would say if somebody was new to the hobby and they're like, hey, I want a Dooku, which one should I get? I'd be like, man, get this one, but do the Goth 3 Designs chassis, the easy one. You know, you only get a 24mm bass speaker, but it's still really good. As far as the best Dooku goes, that's another topic for another day. This one is still awesome. It's slim. It's pretty light. Get your gold trigger activation, your auxiliary buttons down here. You know, I think the only way this could be better is if you had this be a switch as well, but then, you know, it's just switch overload at that point then. And Jesus, 4 switches? That's just total overkill, isn't it? Either way. One thing I did notice with the 89sabers that I like a little bit more than the Watto's Dooku is the chrome plating, specifically on the claw. I think that their finishing methods for the claw was a little better. This just looks cleaner. You know, there's no markings from the machining factory. It's just smooth chrome. Don't get me wrong, I love the Watto's with a passion. But there are a few things that set the two apart. You know, obviously, the visible screws on the spine. Can't say I'm really a fan of that, but it works really well for this hilt, and specifically the chassis. Either way, I think that's about it, actually. Yeah, that's about it. Chassis retention's really good. This holds the bottom chassis in place, the cover tech screw. And there's also a little black set screw in here that holds the top chassis into place, as well as these buttons here. Oh yeah, that was actually another thing I had to modify, was these buttons were meant for the typical 6x6, the 6x6 tactile switches. I was running into issues with that because the chassis seemed to be a little too, the spot that holds the switches, it was pushing them off to the side. so you actually couldn't mount it on there. So what I did was I used brass tactile switches instead. The smaller ones are like 5.3 by 5.3, so they fit in there a lot more free fitting. You just use double-sided tape to hold them in place. And then I used resin from my Resin 3D printer, filled that in, cured it, and then drilled a hole through it that would actually fit the brass plunger, and then glued it in place. So you have this and these holding the bottom chassis together pretty much. So yeah, it's definitely a work of labor and love, that's for sure. I hope that the guys is going to appreciate it and enjoys it for a long time. And I hope you all enjoyed the video, and until next time, may the force be with you always.